Claire never expected to see Melissa's name flash across her phone, especially not with an invitation. The screen lit up as she tucked a tissue-wrapped photo into her purse. The one-line message sat there like a pebble in her shoe. Dinner this Sunday. Would be nice to see you and Noah. No emojis. No hope you're well. Just 10 words that felt more like a formality than a reach toward connection. That morning, she'd stopped by the last photo lab still operating on 3rd Street. The manila envelope in her hand contained a grainy print from over a decade ago, her wedding day. Not the staged shots with stiff smiles, but the candid one. The one Grady had taken when she and Robert were laughing at the altar, unaware of the camera. She hadn't looked at it in years. And now, a decade later, half the image had faded into ghost white, as if the photo had decided what parts of her life to keep. Outside the lab, the town of McMinnville moved at its familiar pace. Leaves trembled on early September trees caught between green and gold. The morning air carried a crispness that hinted at sweaters and cider, while the Main Street diner let out steam from its swinging doors, and the scent of maple bacon spilled onto the sidewalk. Claire pushed through the diner's door, the bell above it chiming with a half-hearted jingle. Grady sat in his usual corner booth, thumbing through the classifieds coffee cup steaming beside him. "You're up early," he said without looking, then tilted his head up with a smile. "Or maybe I'm just late." Claire slid into the booth across from him, setting the photo envelope on the table. "Got something for you?" she said, her voice quieter than the chatter of a waitress listing off pie specials, 2 booths over. Grady took the photo gently like it might flake apart. His fingers smelled faintly of old film chemicals and pine salve. "Still trying to rescue this old thing, huh?" "It's the only one that ever felt real," she said. He nodded, eyes softening. Real tends to fade faster than posed. They chatted about nothing and everything. She asked about his latest battle with the squirrels who'd nested in his gutters. He teased her about still refusing to buy anything pumpkin-flavored until October. Claire laughed genuinely, and for a second she forgot about Melissa's message waiting like a stone in her pocket. On the walk back home, Noah trotted beside her, sneakers squeaking with each hop. He'd insisted on coming along, if only for a jelly donut from the diner. Now his mouth was stained with pink frosting, and his fingers stuck to the paper bag in his hands. "Mom," he said in that tone that always meant he'd been thinking too much. "Is Sunday a special day?" Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Sort of." He took her answer at face value, skipping ahead to crunch leaves underfoot. Claire lingered behind her eyes, catching on a couple gray-haired and slow-walking holding hands as they passed the corner antique shop. A soft pang moved through her ribs. It transported her back to the glint of crystal at her wedding, the echo of her father's toast about family being an anchor. Her mother's hands had been warm and trembling when she pinned Claire's veil. They'd looked proud back then. Back home, their little craftsman smelled faintly of cinnamon, and the laundry she'd forgotten to switch over. The sun had dipped just enough to cast a golden hue over the living room rug. Noah dumped his backpack on the floor and went to his room humming as he packed crayons for the cousins, even though he hadn't seen them in months. Claire stood at the kitchen window watching as Grady shuffled his recycling bins back into place across the street. She held the freshly reprinted photo, its colors a little sharper now, though the left side remained stubbornly washed out. Her face was half visible. Robert's smile was still intact. Everyone else in the background seemed too faded to name. She wasn't sure whether the image was being reclaimed or erased. That night after dinner and dishes, Claire helped Noah lay out his Sunday shirt. He'd chosen the one with tiny blue pine trees printed on it, formal in a 10-year-old's mind. She folded it gently, smoothing the collar like it mattered. Then came the socks, the pencil case, the sketchbook, each packed with care that only made the weight in her chest grow heavier. Noah climbed into bed, but as she reached to switch off the lamp, his voice caught her. "Do you think Grandma will put our picture back on the wall?" The house smelled like garlic bread and fall spices, but there were no seats set for Claire or Noah. The warmth of the porch light cast long shadows across the brick steps as Claire nudged Noah gently toward the door. His arms hugged a flat gift bag to his chest, inside a crayon drawing of the whole family holding hands beneath a tree with golden leaves. The words, "Family Forever," were scrawled in green across the top letters, lopsided but proud. Claire adjusted the pie carrier in her arms. The smell of cinnamon and browned apples curled up around her familiar grounding. She remembered bringing the same dessert for Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when Beatrice had taken it with both hands and kissed her cheek like they were still a family. That same night, Beatrice had leaned toward Noah during dessert, her eyes wet, and whispered, "You remind me of your grandfather when he was your age, so full of light." "Tonight?" Beatrice answered the door with a brisk smile and a lavender perfume that arrived before her voice. "Oh, Claire," she said, taking a step back but not offering her arms. "You're early." "It's 10 minutes till," Claire replied gently. Beatrice didn't answer, just turned on her heel, calling over her shoulder, "Dinner's almost ready." Noah blinked up at Claire, unsure. Claire offered a small smile and gave his back a pat. "Go on," she said, nodding him inside. The foyer looked the same. Wicker basket for shoes, scented candles flickering on a glass console table. Voices bubbled from the dining room. The sound of a football game hummed in the background. Claire set the apple crumble on the kitchen island. No one acknowledged it. Walter was perched on the edge of the couch, eyes locked on the television, a glass of cider in one hand. Melissa stood by the dining table arranging ceramic place cards with meticulous care, her nails painted a deep autumn red. Claire's name wasn't among them. "Claire," Melissa said brightly, almost surprised. "Oh, Noah. Wow, look how tall you've gotten." Noah beamed. "I brought a picture," he said, pulling the drawing from its bag. He walked it over to Beatrice, who was slicing cranberry salad into bowls at the counter. He held it out with both hands. "I made this for you." Beatrice looked up briefly. Her lips curved barely. She took the drawing, glanced at it for no more than 3 seconds, then set it down beside the toaster, the edge of the paper brushing against a bowl of dried potpourri. "Thank you, sweetie," she said, turning back to the salad without another word. Noah hesitated, then drifted back toward Claire. The light in his eyes dimmed just a little. Claire bent down, whispering, "She's just busy. Don't worry. Okay?" He nodded slowly, but his hands tugged at the hem of his shirt. The table was nearly full. Wine glasses clinked, voices rose in overlapping stories. Melissa's husband joked about his new grill. Someone laughed about a canceled cruise. The cousins traded Minecraft tips across the mashed potatoes. But there were no chairs left. No napkins folded at the edge for Claire and Noah, not even side plates. Claire stood still for a beat, searching the table, then quietly turned and slipped into the pantry. She emerged with 2 folding chairs and set them at the far end of the table next to the serving cart. No one seemed to notice. She caught Grady's old words echoing in her mind. Real tends to fade faster than posed. Dinner passed like a play she hadn't rehearsed for. Conversations leapt past her. No one asked how work was going. No one asked Noah about his latest sketch or whether he liked 5th grade. Claire served her son a spoonful of sweet potatoes when she noticed his plate was still empty. He smiled gratefully and dug in without a word. Claire's gaze wandered to the refrigerator. A child's drawing of a turkey, probably from one of the cousins, was pinned with a magnet that said, "Give thanks." It was crooked and vibrant, clearly a recent addition. Noah's drawing sat forgotten near the toaster. Later, while the cousins watched a movie in the den and adults migrated to the living room for spiced tea, Claire wandered into the hallway toward the photo wall. It had been updated. New frames, warm lighting, careful symmetry. Melissa at the beach, the cousins in Halloween costumes. Beatrice and Walter on their anniversary, laughing in matching flannel. Claire searched for even one image of herself or Noah. Nothing. A wedding photo she remembered clearly now hung lower and smaller, reframed. She leaned closer. It was cropped. Robert stood beside Beatrice and Walter, champagne glass in hand. The edge of Claire's veil, once visible, was now gone, smoothed out, erased. Claire felt her throat tighten. Her grip on her purse strap grew white-knuckled. Noah appeared beside her, voice barely above a whisper. "They forgot us, didn't they?" She forced a smile, though it trembled. Maybe they just ran out of time. They left not long after Claire helped Noah into his coat, thanked Beatrice for dinner. Melissa handed her a half-empty container of cranberry salad, like a consolation prize. As they stepped onto the porch, Claire glanced back once more. There on the far wall just above the credenza hung the same wedding photo. Only now, in this version, Claire had been edited out. Noah's cupcake sat in a neatly decorated box, untouched, unwanted. Claire watched him carefully pipe blue frosting along the edges of the cupcakes while she swirled green in the center. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and powdered sugar, the oven's warmth wrapping them in a quiet cocoon. Outside, a breeze scattered early autumn leaves along the curb, their dry edges skittering across the sidewalk in gentle whispers. Noah concentrated hard, tongue poking out as he drew a shaky heart on the last cupcake. "He likes green and blue," he said, meaning Liam. "These are his favorite." He looked up at Claire. "Do you think Grandma will let me give them to him?" Claire didn't answer right away. She adjusted the ribbon on the box and nodded slowly. "I think it's kind of you to want to." The drive to Beatrice's house was quiet. Noah held the box in his lap as if it were a tray of blown glass. His gaze stayed fixed on the cupcakes, watching for any shift, any sliding of the icing. The house looked the same: fresh paint, manicured hedges, pumpkins by the porch that hadn't yet been carved. Claire parked at the curb, engine idling for a beat longer than necessary before she turned the key. Noah bounded up the steps and knocked. Claire followed, arms crossed against the chill. The door creaked open. Beatrice stood there in her robe, hair curled tightly. Lipstick faded like she'd meant to put herself together, but didn't get far. Her eyes flicked from Claire to Noah, then down to the box in his hands. "Hi, sweetie," she said, the smile slow and uneven. "We weren't expecting visitors." Noah extended the box upward with both hands. "We made cupcakes," he said, "for Liam's birthday. Green and blue his favorite." Beatrice glanced behind her as though someone might appear to offer her a better excuse. Then she stepped forward, gently nudging the box back toward him. "Now's not the best time, sweetheart. Maybe next weekend." "Okay." Claire saw the slight flinch in Noah's shoulders as he pulled the box closer to his chest. Beatrice added, "I'll tell Liam you said hi." Then, with an awkward wave, she closed the door. "Back in the car." Noah stared at the box in his lap. His voice was low. "I guess they don't like vanilla." Claire swallowed hard. She didn't correct him. She didn't explain. She drove. At home, she placed the cupcakes in the fridge. They took up more space than they needed, pristine and painful. Claire stood for a long moment, the door still open, cool air seeping over her arms. Later that afternoon, Grady knocked, holding a manila envelope and a 6-pack of root beer. "Thought you and the boy could use a sugar fix," he said, stepping inside without waiting. Claire offered him a seat, and he placed the envelope on the table, found something in the old studio. "Figured you'd appreciate it." Inside was a black and white photo Beatrice at maybe 20 smiling under a maple tree sunlight in her hair. She looked radiant, untouched by the sharp edges she wore now. "She used to talk about family like it was everything," Grady murmured. "You'd think she was building a kingdom." Claire studied the photo. She glowed. She said the word surprising her. Grady nodded. "Wouldn't hurt to digitize it. Save the good parts." "I can do that," Claire said softly, tracing the worn edge of the image. It felt like a pact unspoken, but alive. That evening she checked on Noah. He lay curled in bed, sketchbook unopened on the floor. Claire sat beside him, smoothing the hair from his forehead. His voice was barely audible. "Would they love me more if I wasn't your son?" The question hit her like a fist to the ribs. She couldn't answer, not with words. Instead, she pulled him into her arms and held him, her cheek against his temple. The silence between them louder than anything she could have said. When he finally drifted off, his breath soft and even. Claire rose. She walked to the closet and pulled down her wedding photo album. The pages turned with a familiar weight until they didn't. Halfway through, she paused. A section was missing. Torn, clean gaps where there should have been smiles. Vows that Dance, her father, insisted on. She turned the book over slowly, her fingers shaking. Something else was gone. Claire didn't expect to find her wedding in a trash bin. The drizzle had started just as they turned onto Hillside Lane. It fell in a fine mist, softening the edges of everything. Lawns, mailboxes, the crisp lines of freshly painted shutters. Claire pulled the car to the curb, her hands steady on the wheel. Noah sat in the back sketchpad in his lap, silent. He hadn't asked where they were going. He didn't need to. The house was as Edgar had described, prim, manicured, and stripped of warmth. New stone pavers led up to the door. The porch was bare, no wreath, no wind chimes, no sign anyone meant to linger. Claire's eyes flicked to the row of bins at the edge of the driveway. Green for yard waste, blue for recycling, black for trash. The lids were cracked open slightly as if daring her to look. She stepped out of the car and crossed the lawn. The breeze lifted a loose strand of her hair, and the faint hum of a garbage truck echoed in the distance. The black bin was half full. At first it looked like nothing, just junk mail, crumpled tissue, a pizza box. But then her fingers brushed something glossy. She pulled out a photograph bent sharply at one corner. Her wedding dress, her own face. The moment frozen in soft light, blurred now by grime and neglect, torn in two. Dean still intact, Claire barely visible. She dug deeper. A card with crooked handwriting. Happy birthday. Grandma love. Noah. A drawing. Crayon sketched figures in front of a house. 4 people holding hands. Our family scrawled in blocky letters at the top. Claire stopped moving. The wind picked up, rustling the trees above, sending dry leaves skittering across the sidewalk. She stood there, clutching the drawing, her breath shallow. Back in the car. Noah looked up as she climbed in. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Are we still their family?" Claire didn't blink. "No," she said. "Because family doesn't throw you away." That night the house was quiet. A single lamp lit the living room, casting a soft pool of light over the carpet. Claire sat at the table, laptop open in front of her. The trash-stained photo lay beside her, flattened under a glass of water. She typed slowly, deliberately. Subject: emotional exclusion and evidence of harm. To Danica Miller at Anderson Legal Group, com. Her fingers moved without hesitation. She attached photos of the card, the drawing, the torn wedding image. Each upload felt like shedding a layer of something heavy. She hit send. Noah padded into the room, rubbing his eyes. Claire rose and guided him back to bed, tucking the blanket under his chin. His breath was slow, almost even, but his brow creased in sleep. Downstairs, the front porch creaked. Claire opened the door to find a small envelope on the mat, weighted by a familiar object. It was Grady's digitized photo of Beatrice, restored, brightened. Beside it, wrapped gently in a cloth napkin, sat an old Polaroid camera. She recognized it from his living room shelf. His wife's favorite, he once said. No note, just the gesture. She stepped back inside, the chill of the night air lingering on her skin. The clock ticked on the mantel. The wind whispered against the window panes. Then the phone rang. Claire picked up. Claire said, the voice on the line calm and resolute. This is Danica. You have a case. This isn't just emotional. This borders on documented harm. Claire closed her eyes. She could feel something shift inside her, like a door creaking open after years of rust. She reached for the printer tray. The draft of the cease and desist letter was still warm to the touch, the legal language sharp and clean. Then came the sound that cracked everything open. Noah screamed from upstairs. By the time the sun rose, Claire had already signed every page. The envelopes were stacked neatly beside the French press, each one weighed down with the kind of stillness that follows resolve. Claire's fingers trembled slightly, not from hesitation, but from a steady current of adrenaline that hadn't faded since the night before. She placed the last certified label over the return address and pressed it flat. The soft hiss of the adhesive seal was strangely satisfying. The October light filtered through the kitchen window, slanting across the floor in pale gold. Outside, the leaves along the walkway had begun to crisp, curling like parchment in the chill. She zipped Noah's jacket up to his chin before walking him to the car. He held his lunchbox close, glancing at her now and then, but saying nothing. They both knew this morning was different. At the post office, Claire didn't meet the clerk's eyes. She slid the stack forward and watched as each was scanned, stamped, processed. The final one made a faint thunk as it dropped into the outgoing bin. A quiet war had begun, and she hadn't needed to raise her voice. Back home, the kitchen counter had become a war room, papers arranged with surgical precision, her laptop glowing with open tabs. Danica had followed up with brief instructions, timelines, contingencies. Everything felt controlled, clinical, except for the ache just under Claire's ribs. Noah was at school. The silence in the house felt like a sigh held too long. The phone buzzed voicemail. She knew the number before she pressed play. A lawyer. Really? Claire. Melissa's voice was laced with practiced outrage. This is beyond you. We're family. What are you trying to prove? There was a pause, a breath, the fake composure cracking slightly. Call me Claire. Didn't. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, eyes tracing the lines of the wallpaper, soft flowers faded by time. Her phone buzzed again. Notifications from Instagram. Curious, she opened the app and clicked on Melissa's latest post. A curated shot of autumn candles and faux pumpkins arranged on a mantel captioned, "Family is everything." Grateful heart. Home vibes only. The comments weren't grateful. Not anymore. Didn't she have a sister? Where's her nephew? This feels incomplete. Claire stared at the screen, One comment had already been deleted. Another was from someone she didn't recognize, just a question mark followed by a single word. Erased. She set the phone down without replying. Later that afternoon, Grady appeared on her porch, a folded newspaper in hand. He didn't knock, just set it gently by the door with a nod, and walked off. She opened it. A 1991 clipping from the local paper. Beatrice smiling, holding a bouquet at the town parade. Caption: Heart of the community. Claire ran her finger over the photo. The irony was so thick it could choke. At Noah's school pickup, things had shifted. The front office receptionist gave her a warm smile. Afternoon. Ms. Emery. A P coach nodded on his way past. Good for you, Claire. She paused beside the car. Good for you. As if they'd all been watching. That evening, she poured herself tea and curled up on the couch, pulling her knees close. Noah was upstairs building a spaceship from shoeboxes and masking tape. Claire opened the old family app out of habit, unsure what she hoped to find. It was still active, new photos uploaded just that week. Beatrice holding Melissa's youngest, Walter grilling in a king of the backyard apron. All smiling, all posed. The name of the group had changed. Real Family Thread. She stared for a long time, not at the images, but at the title. Not even a photo of her wedding, not one of Noah's birthdays. Just then her phone buzzed again. A new message, blocked number. If you ruin this family, you'll regret it. At the Harvest Festival. Noah's drawing hung from a wooden booth titled Uncropped. The booth was simple, reclaimed cedar panels, a hand-painted sign and twine stretched across like a makeshift gallery wall. Clothespins held Polaroids and charcoal sketches. Visitors shuffled past in knit scarves and wool hats, hands wrapped around steaming mugs of cider. The air smelled of baked apples and hay. A bluegrass band played nearby, fiddle and banjo weaving through laughter. Claire stood beside Grady behind the table, smiling softly as a couple paused in front of a faded photo labeled Proud but Private. A toddler pointed at a crayon drawing of two men holding a baby, and his mother leaned in to whisper something gentle in his ear. Noah's piece hung at eye level, markers on textured paper, him and Claire under a sprawling maple tree, their hands clasped, simple lines, bold colors, the word us, written in the corner. Beneath it, he'd signed his name in looping print and added a tiny heart. People stopped. They always did. I love this one, said an older woman in a denim vest covered with volunteer pins. You can feel how much love is in it. Claire watched from behind the booth. She didn't interrupt. She just let the warmth move through her unhurried. Grady leaned close. He's got your eye for framing, she smiled. He has his own? Better, I think. Throughout the day, neighbors wandered by. Some just waved. Others stayed to talk. One man brought his grandson back a second time. A local librarian pinned a note on the board. Art heals. What words sometimes can't. Later back at home, the warmth of the festival clung to her clothes like wood smoke. Claire set a pot of soup on the stove, her hands moving on instinct. The house felt calm, not quiet, the kind of calm that follows choosing peace over permission. On the counter sat an envelope, not standard white but soft ivory with her name written in a familiar slanted hand. She didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Beatrice's cursive always curved too tightly. Maybe we misunderstood. Maybe we were wrong. That's what it read on the card inside, though. Claire didn't open it. She slid it into the same drawer as the torn wedding photo. That drawer didn't need to be locked. Just closed later. Wrapped in the scarf that once belonged to Grady's wife, a rose-colored wool blend with tiny embroidery at the ends. Claire stepped onto the porch with him. They didn't say much. Wind rustled the maple tree out front. A wind chime sang quietly from a neighbor's yard. Grady finally spoke. "Funny thing about frames, they break easy." Claire looked at him. "But what's inside?" he continued. "That's what lasts." She nodded. When the sun dipped and shadows stretched long across the sidewalk, Claire walked upstairs to tuck Noah in. He was reading by flashlight, the book open but his eyes drifting. "You tired?" she asked. He shrugged. "Just thinking." She smoothed his hair and waited. "Do you think they still think about us?" Claire didn't rush the answer. She pulled the blanket a little higher on his shoulders, then met his eyes. Thinking about someone doesn't undo what they did. He seemed to sit with that a moment, then nodded once and turned off his flashlight. She kissed his forehead and stepped out, pausing at the door just as her phone buzzed. An email. The subject line read, "Would you consider hosting a storytelling night on Family Truth?" The sun had long set over McMinnville, but traces of warmth lingered in a drawing pinned to a wooden booth in a scarf passed between generations, and in a child's quiet smile. What once felt like erasure had become clarity framed not by blood but by choice. Kindness, even when unreturned, leaves a mark, and judgment, however subtle, often hides the deeper truth, waiting patiently to be seen. Sometimes the family we need is built from the ones who stayed, not those who turned away. Like a porch light left on through the night, a simple act of love can guide someone home, and maybe you know someone still searching for that light.